How's it going, Shane?
Hey Jason, how are you?
Awesome. Super excited to introduce you
Nice.
to John over here. I've been telling you guys both a lot about each other.
How you doing,
Wonderful.
Shane?
Hi John, how are you? Nice to meet
Great. I
you.
love the bookshelf behind you. It looks
Thank you.
perfect.
Where do you
Appreciate
see
it.
his bookstore?
Oh,
Um,
Yeah,
even
right.
better.
Yeah. This is nothing. Yeah, I've got a whole bookstore and got a bunch of other shelves in here too. So
oh man,
yeah.
Nice.
love it. Yeah, so John, like Shane is one of the most like learned people I've ever met. I would say like top five most read person. And he's like a real philosopher like us. He's read everything from Plato up until Kant and everything in
Mhm.
between. He's an expert on the
Yeah.
Byzantine Empire. He's got an
Nice.
amazing bookstore in Lake Worth, Florida. And he also owns a publishing company. He's working on publishing his third book.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So,
correct. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. But I do go past Kant too. I mean, Kant is important, but I also have studied, like Nietzsche and some of the modernist philosophers, postmodernist philosophers too. So, I stay current for the most part. But yeah, I consider myself a Platonist, I guess you would say. Yeah.
Nice.
And the bookstore is called The Dancing Elephant. It's in Lake Worth, Florida. It is a metaphysical bookstore. So we specialize in world religions, spirituality, philosophy, new age things, sell crystals and tarot cards and all that too. And it's been around for 53 years, so it's an institution in Florida. And just started publishing books. Got these books we published. It's called Gallo Glass Books is the name of the publishing company. I got the other one next to me. It's Monad. This is all Neoplatonism. This is 800
Nice.
pages. 800 pages of philosophy. So right up Jason's alley. Yeah.
no, we're going to ask you
you,
questions
you,
about that.
sure. Yeah, you can see how we bonded pretty quickly though, because
Yep.
we both see an 800-page philosophy book and think it's appealing, and very very few people think that's appealing.
I think it looks a little short, 800 pages.
Sure, yeah, right,
Depending on the print. Depending on the print.
right.
Yeah, so Shane, this is the Wheel of Bliss podcast. So the first question is, what's your
Mhm.
idea of living your bliss? Sounds like you're living it, but
Yeah, so I kind of subscribe to a sort of magical idea, you would say, which is that everyone has a will with like a capital W. It's similar to a dharma in the Eastern idea, but it's a little more like um, I don't know, pinpointed. That dharma can be a very broad term. It can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different situations.
right.
But the will is like this is what you're here to do. You were here. It's very sort of telos driven or the purpose driven. You're here to do something. Figure it out. Stay monofocused on that. Basically, I've subscribed to that since I was maybe in high school. Um, and I believe the closer you stay to that path, the better things are going to be. A lot of times you hear the analogy that people are like stars in the sky. And stars, as long as they stay in their orbit, they don't bump into each other, right? They're perfect. They all have their paths and they beautifully, and there's a lot of harmony. But if you stray from your path, you're going to start colliding into things. So I've stayed on my path, and I think Joseph Campbell famously says, "Follow your bliss."
Yeah.
Of course, he is heavily influenced from the East, but to him, when he's saying that, it's kind of similar to what I'm saying. In order to find out what your will is, you have to follow this sort of feeling of meaning. That when you do something, it feels meaningful. That's a little cue to you, like, hey, this is you're on the right path here. You're going in the right direction. And then ultimately, when you find your actual will, whether it's a career or it's a, domestic duties, maybe like it should just be a family or something. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. It doesn't have to be your career, but it is something. And whenever you find that, these sort of hints of meaning or of bliss become ultimate bliss, right? So once you're fully in your lane, you're like, this is what I'm here to do, When you're Tom Brady and you're the quarterback, you're like, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be, and that's when you're just saturated in meaning and saturated in bliss, basically. So that's what it would mean to me. It is, you could critique it and say it's a little earthly or like mundane. Because a lot of more spiritual people would say, oh, well, that's just, that's like pragmatic stuff. That's like your day to day life. Bliss for me is like blasting off into enlightenment, and there's that too. But I think that, you incarnate and you are born and you were given quite a bit of pretty specific qualities and qualifiers for your life, and I think that those are purposeful personally. So that's how I would say, that's how I would describe bliss.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and that's like
Yeah.
Herbert Gunther talks about like
Mm,
a philosophy term like process product words. Like so what you're
mhm.
saying is kind of like that. Like bliss, initially it's a path. Like you are
Right.
trying to align with it, but it's already there.
Right.
Once you find it, now you
Mm,
have the product and now you
right.
just
It's a position. Yeah. Yeah.
you stay in
Yeah.
it.
I agree. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that you can tell when people have hit their stride, when
Mm,
they found that. Like I said, even it could be something like I said, like football or something like, that a lot of spiritual people again don't think is important. But when you see like Jimi Hendrix playing guitar, you're like, okay, like this is what he's supposed to be doing. I'm pretty sure. And what you're supposed to be doing might not be as spectacular,
right.
but it will be as meaningful. It will be as I don't know, blissful, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, it's like when you align with that, it's the inner experience and
Yeah.
all the things that you're learning that are important as opposed to how much money you're making, how famous you are, all that
Sure.
stuff.
Yeah, and there are, again, like I said, your will or your bliss in life, it does have qualifiers, right? So you still have to be a good person. You still have to, do all the other spiritual things, like you said, to align your inner with your outer, or else it's just a disaster.
Mhm.
Like
Right.
if you find your place, but you're just a terrible person, well, you're gonna make a catastrophe out of it. You're not gonna make it what it could be. Um, yeah, and of course, you have to pursue a larger goal that in this sort of spiritual realm of things of stripping away your persona, your personality, coming to know kind of who this soul or this person is. Um, those are kind of ongoing at the same time, but I think that they inform each other
Right. I
personally.
was going to say it comes out of doing that. That's the result.
Mhm.
So you kind of answer that. It's like a feeling. You feel like there's meaning, but do you have any more specific, like advice for how people like, let's say people have no idea what to do. Like, how
Mhm.
would they find their will?
Well, yeah, there's two different ideas here. One is that it takes a lot of hard work and scrutiny, and the other one is there's two schools of thought. The other one is that it will come to you, basically, that it will make itself known. I wouldn't. I think that it's a blending of the two. I think, like I said, that it does call out to you, that a voice calls out of the burning bush. Like it will make itself known in many ways. And I think I agree with Joseph Campbell that you feel meaning, you feel good, you feel blissful when you're engaging in certain things, and that is probably your calling. That's why they call it a calling, because it calls to you. But I also believe, yeah, that it takes, it takes contemplation, it takes scrutiny, it takes coming to know yourself. Who am I? Like I said, you're not born a blank slate. Whether it's your zodiac, whether it's your parents, whether it's geography, where you're born, et cetera, time period when you're born, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things inform, what it is you're here to do. And I do think it takes some unpacking, but I think that that is the adventure of your life. I think that it is your hero's journey. And I know actually Jordan Peterson, funny enough, has a really good take that hit me one time. He said, if you want to know your calling or your purpose in life, tell the truth. to yourself and to other people. And if you can just do that, like seriously, like always tell the truth, even if it hurts somebody. If Jason says like, "Hey, are we friends?" I'm like, "No." It's like, "Hey, well, that's going to hurt Jason's feelings, but it's the truth." And he says, if you always tell the truth to yourself and to others, pretty quickly things will unfold and show you that that golden thread of truth is actually the adventure of your life. So whatever comes after you telling the truth is sort of for the good. So it's like if Jason says, "Are we friends?" and I'm like, "No," and he gets all pissed and leaves, well, that's how things were supposed to be, right? Because that is the truth, and the truth is how things are supposed to be. It's how things really
Well,
are.
yeah,
And so
it's kind
yeah,
of like, yeah, what you're saying is like,
yeah. And so if you keep doing that, your life will kind of fall into place where it's like, hey, this is the truth. I'm living the truth. I'm honest with myself. I'm honest to Jason, and things will kind of arrange and show you, I guess, what your purpose is. I would
yeah,
I
like
would
you have like
argue.
there's like an inner voice, like the quiet inner voice. And if you keep doing what people pleasing and not really being honest, you're not going to hear that
Yep.
voice. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, your conscience is. Well, I actually talked to my brother, who's a big influence on me. This morning, we're talking about how in this spiritual kind of new agey world, there's a big split. There's a big focus on consciousness and not a big focus on conscience. So you talk to a lot of people who think they're spiritual because they can like feel energy coming off of crystals or, because they astral project or something, but they're not good people. And it's like, and I'm not saying everyone who does those things is not a good person, obviously. But level one is to be a good person. Astral projecting is
I
a
would
few levels
argue
up.
they're not even they're not even conscious, but that's another story.
Yeah.
I would say they're
That's
unconscious. They're kind of just
yeah.
like walking like talking the talk and like and
hmm
dressing the part. But
Yeah.
anyway,
I think, yeah. And again, if they were telling the truth to themselves and to others, it would probably lead them out of that pretty quickly.
well, that's
So I,
something
I
that
think that
John
it's a good
talks
start.
a lot about. That it's like when someone is like just being difficult, you just like, do you want you have to decide, but you could ask them like, are you looking for the truth? And most people aren't.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I'm discovering more and more. Most people are looking to
Yeah.
actually be lied to and to lie, and it's just like this
Yeah.
big.
I think if you tell the truth to yourself and others, that it can cause a lot of trouble,
Hmm.
like I said, but that is the adventure of your life. That is your hero's journey. In the hero's journey, there's a lot of trouble, right? There's a lot of trials and difficult things, but it's ultimate meaning. You become the hero. And I think that if you start telling the truth to everyone, you don't have to be rude or feel like disrespectful or something. Um, and I think Jordan Peterson even gives the qualifier. He says, well, if you can't tell the truth, at least don't lie. Just keep your mouth shut.
Right.
Like, so,
That's what the Dalai Lama said.
but yeah,
If you
right.
can't help people, at least don't harm them. That's what Dalai Lama says. It's kind of
Right. Right.
like the
Yeah.
emotional equivalent of that.
Mm. I think that's how you find your bliss, though, is telling
Right.
the truth, contemplating yourself, knowing yourself, and allowing your life to kind of fall into place easily. Be a little passive about things.
Awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
normally, my questions seem like a whipsaw, but you actually,
Mm.
Shane, led right into my questions, my 2
Okay.
questions,
Good.
my next
Good.
2 questions. So, when was the first or the biggest time that you felt different or disconnected from others, possibly from telling the truth?
Oh wow, the first time.
First or the
Um.
biggest time? Time people say, It was this first time, it was a little thing," but still, I would be interested in it, and then they jump to a biggest time, so
Um. I think that personally, I tell people this a lot. I make it a conscious like decision to make myself hard to categorize. And I think that people should do that. I think that like you shouldn't be a character, right? So I shouldn't just be like, oh, Jason, he's Buddhist guy. He's just the Buddhist guy. And that's all. I can immediately just put him in a box, and I make it a point not to be that. So, kind of taking, uh, eccentric positions, I guess, that I'm interested in to kind of offset certain things. Not, sometimes it's purposeful, sometimes it's not. But I came across that at a pretty young age. So I was maybe 10 years old or something when I went to a very kind of high end private school. But me and my dad would take me hunting, take me fishing. We were doing all this outdoors stuff that my peers were not doing at all. You know, I and and I immediately, by the time I was like 10, I was like, "Oh, I feel like an outsider." Basically, I feel not in like some kind of insecure way or something, but I
Right,
felt
right.
I felt different, and that kind of set me on the track. But my parents always told me and my brother that we were special, to be honest, that we were gifted, and I think that goes a long way. And I think it's my mom went through IVF to have me and my brother, so it was quite a long process. And so I think that they really did believe you guys are special because so much time and even money and stuff had to go into even us having kids that they appreciated us 10 times more. And I always like this story about Thomas Jefferson. I don't know if you guys have heard this one, but Thomas Jefferson, I think he was pretty young. He was in elementary school age, and he was not doing well at all. And the teachers basically said like, "Hey, you're gonna have to be homeschooled. Like you're not keeping up with the other kids." And so they didn't tell him that, but they wrote a letter to his mom and said, "Hey, little Tommy is he's not gonna make it. Basically, you're gonna have to teach him on your own." And so she did, and of course he becomes Thomas Jefferson. And one day he asked his mom, he said, "Hey, what happened with that letter?" Because she told him that he got a letter saying he's so special, he's so gifted that he shouldn't be in school. And she told him what it actually said. But, by her kind of reinforcing you're special, you're different, you're gifted, it made him special and gifted. And so I think my parents kind of did something really similar. But from the time I was really young, they were literally like, "You're a genius." I'm not saying I'm genius, but it made me probably be a lot better than I would have been otherwise. 'Cause I had a lot of support.
Nice. So my second question is, when is the first or biggest time that you caused others to feel
Hmm.
uncomfortable by disrupting the status quo?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm a Pisces, so I'm not a big disruptor of the status quo. Gosh, I had to think the biggest time cause others to be uncomfortable. I
Yeah,
don't
like you
know. I
question
don't.
the status quo
Yeah,
and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And you're sitting there going,
yeah.
because that first
That.
question is
Yeah,
inside if you think about it. It's you
yeah.
realizing you're different. This
Mhm.
question is an outside question.
That's a good question. I don't know if I can think of one that's like that dramatic. I would say pretty often I'm around other people that have pretty normy views, and I say things that not in any like crazy way make people uncomfortable, but at least make them question. Like a lot of my friends are vegetarian and don't drink alcohol and things like that because of subtle, you know, uh, times when I questioned it or kind of poked at them, but it wasn't anything like super dramatic. It's more like wearing people down over time into kind
So
of
they weren't so are you a vegetarian?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so
vegan
then
or yeah.
you would question them and make them uncomfortable with that. Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. I would say that when it comes to, like, eating animals and things, that's probably the time that I would actually butt heads with people, in conversation because it can be a pretty soft spot for as I'm sure Jason's experienced with people. It can be triggering.
And I'm not as
Yeah, I would say
nice. I'm not as skillful
yeah.
as you with the slowly wearing them down unconscious.
Yeah, it seems
And
yeah. They say, water wears down a stone over time. So I tend to hold that view too.
that's awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, so Shane, so what would you say is like your
Mm.
perfect day?
My perfect
Yeah, like
day,
what's
that's
a
a good
perfect day for
question.
you? Yeah.
I like to be busy, which is funny. I really do. I like to have a lot of kind of errands and like things going on.
Okay.
Um, like when we were setting up the bookstore and I had just like a huge to-do list of things that have to get done and projects. I like that. I'm pretty busy guy. In the evening, I'm kind of a homebody, to be honest, though. So I like my day to be busy, but then when I get home, I don't like to go out or like have a bunch of stuff to do. I like to kind of sit around in my own house. Obviously, I read and yeah,
In your perfect
yeah. I'd
day,
say that.
how many hours are you reading in a perfect day?
Oh, not that many. Maybe one or two. You know,
Really?
nothing crazy. Yeah,
My perfect day is
yeah,
definitely 2 minimum.
yeah. I mean, it depends if I have the right book, I guess. I mean, if I'm on something that's really got me, I could spend all day
Yeah.
reading it. Yeah, yeah, I
Awesome.
consistently read. Again, I kind of chip away at things.
And, if you
Sure.
could have, like, one wish right now in your life, something internal, like change in yourself or external change, what would you
Mm-hmm.
wish for?
It's a little vain, but I'd probably wish to have some kind of a massive funding for publishing. Because we do quite well. It's a successful business. We have like good margins and all of that, but we can only grow so fast, you know. And I think to make a big difference in the world, that I would wish for some kind of backing to just unload stuff on the masses because we really could do some damage. And we will, but again, it'll just take because it's a completely independent company. It's self funded, so it'll be over time will make a big difference. But um, that's probably what I'd wish for. Yeah, because we could do some really, really, really cool projects.
Wow, so just
Yeah,
publishing more and more stuff. That's
just publishing more, having the means to do so.
awesome.
And what's the goal? What's the goal with publishing more?
Oh, it's not one goal. There's kind of a handful, but we really want to create beautiful books. So I can explain it a little bit, but basically the book market has collapsed for obvious reasons with the internet and so on. And what you've seen is when market is a mechanism, meaning the more players that are in it, the more efficiently it works. Right? If you have two people in a market, it's not a very efficient market. There can be gaps, and there's opportunities in that. And so that's what we found in publishing is when the market mechanism, when all the big players get sucked out of it, and all the little intermediate players, the printers and the typesetters and the proofreaders all get kind of stripped out of it and go elsewhere, that the whole market uh, becomes inefficient and there are now opportunities. There's gaps to be taken advantage of. And so what most publishers are doing right now is they are chasing customers to the bottom. So they're saying, "Oh, you don't want this book? That's $18. What if we made it $15? What if we made it $12? Then would you buy it?" And they just keep cutting costs. So they say, "Well, yeah, forget about the art on the cover. Forget about the paper, make it a little bit thinner." So they just cut stuff, and they're chasing consumers to the bottom. We said, "Hey, you know, this is crazy. Books are just becoming junk, basically. They used to be beautiful, and now they're all cheap and flimsy, and there's no love going into them, no artistry." And so we said, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to make luxury books. This
Hmm.
book is special. This book is special to you. We're going to make it look like it's special to you. And really make it a beautiful object. No shortcuts. We're commissioning custom artwork on the covers. Like this is an oil painting that we had done. There's gold foiling on the boards, just like you would see on old books. Where it's
Yeah.
gold foiled. It's obviously a hardcover. Uh, Paper is all hand chosen. There's custom artwork inside of it. These are like platonic solids emanating out of the monad. So these are the real deal. The other book, same thing. Full color inside. There's colored images. There's gold foiling on it. And these are $60 books. They're not like super, super expensive, but they're important books, and we're trying to make them look like important books. So that's basically we're trying to match up the outer with the inner in that way. And we're mostly publishing books that are special to people that don't have a good edition. Maybe there's a book that you love. You're like, wow, this book changed my life. But then you look at your shelf and you're like, wow, it doesn't look like it would change your life. It looks like a $15 paperback book with some random, art on the cover. It should look like a book that would change your life. That's how we want it to look. And some of them will be like two of the books we're working on right now are fully illustrated. We commissioned all the illustrations. So they're really special, and we want to revive some things, some things that have been overlooked, like the Giordano Bruno book. It was huge in the 70s and 80s, not so huge right now, where like people should be reading this. And so we kind of think if you make things look like beautiful, that people will want to read them. And so we think we
Nice.
can make a pretty positive impact on the world by, making beautiful editions of things that are special.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So my final two questions here is, what compelled you to disrupt, like, make people feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable about eating? Like, there had to be something that compelled you to actually step into that. What compelled you to do that?
Well, I originally went vegan or plant-based when I was 18. I was in college and having some just personal issues like anxiety and things like that. And it was pretty bad, panic attacks and what have you. And my older brother had already gone vegetarian. And he said, well, maybe you should change the way you're eating. It could be causing some kind of underlying, your subconscious is aware that there's contradictions within your behavior and kind of your worldview, and it's causing some kind of tension inside. And I was like, I don't know. Like I've seen the videos of the pigs and all this stuff. Like I grew up hunting, so I was like, it doesn't really get me.
Right.
And he said, well, it's not about the pigs right now. This is about you. Like just try it out and see what happens. And I didn't listen to him for probably 6 months, but then things kind of came to a head. Um, and I said, whatever. I'm trying all this other random stuff. I'm trying different supplements, and I wasn't taking any like pharmaceuticals or anything. But seeing a therapist, all this other. I was like, let me just try it out. It seems to be working for him. I admire him, and so I tried it, and it pretty much worked, to be honest. Um, and once I started going down the rabbit hole, I was like, this just makes so much sense. Once you step outside the box, it's like it's a horror show basically, and you just can't unsee it. And I'm not preachy in any way, but like your question about making people uncomfortable, people close to me would, kind of, I guess, notice I'm leading by example. I seem to be doing okay, and I don't know. I guess they'd always wonder, why are you eating like this? Why are you doing that? And I would explain, and there's not too many ways around it, to be honest. And so it would make them uncomfortable. It wasn't that I wanted to make them uncomfortable. I don't usually bring it up typically, but usually people become very curious and start asking questions. And I guess, yeah, I've had quite a few friends go down that route. And I have some influence at the bookstore, obviously talking to a lot of seekers. And the guy who I bought the bookstore from, who ran it for 50 years, he went vegetarian when he was like 25, and he's like 85 now. So, um, yeah, he was also kind of, I don't know, inspirational in that. But I don't give it too much thought, to be honest. People who don't do it think it's a big deal, and I think Jason feels the same way. I mean, I don't give it much thought. I just, I eat well, and yeah, I think it's the philosopher's diet. The Greek philosophers and a lot of the other great
Can you
philosophers.
mention some of
The
those names? The people who were the philosophers who
Yeah, yeah, all the Greeks. I mean, that to them, I get, like I said, it's called the philosopher's diet.
Pythagoras.
It was, yeah, Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle was not, by the way, and he's a materialist, which is funny. Um, yeah, he was a bad boy. Plotinus, Proclus, Porphyry famously wrote an essay against animal flesh eating, which is interesting. Plutarch. Later on, you have Nietzsche. You have, I mean, it depends who we're calling a philosopher and who's not, but Rudolf Steiner. Obviously, people like Tesla. I think a lot of people know about that. A lot of the yogis, of course. Yeah, I mean, tons of people. And
Leonardo
to me,
Leonardo da Vinci.
yeah, right, Da Vinci. Yeah, a lot of the kind of Renaissance era
So
people.
I understand why you did it for you, and your
Mhm.
brother helped you. What compelled you to do this to wear away at other people?
Yeah, again, like I said, it was really leading by example. I don't preach to other people, but people are always curious. Whenever I go somewhere, when eating with friends, or if I go to a restaurant with,
So you're
you
saying
know,
you don't really step into it or point it out. You just lead by example and you
no,
just watch how it deals
yeah,
with their unconscious. Okay.
But you
yeah,
would
yeah,
say, I
that's
would
correct.
say,
Yeah.
Shane, with going back to your books and with this,
Mhm.
would you say that you love truth and you say you
Yeah,
lead by example? You
yeah,
want people to experience truth, whether you're
yeah.
disrupting it consciously or just by
Mhm.
example.
Yeah,
You
and
do
there's two
want
things
truth.
there. One, I do, of course. Yeah, it's not like I don't care. But there's one thing is that yes, if someone is in the bookstore and says, "Where do I start? What do I do?" A lot of times I'll say, try and go vegetarian. It's a pretty good first step as far as spirituality goes, because in doing so, it's not just what you're eating, but it causes a lot of introspection. You have to start thinking, okay, what are my presuppositions? What are these cultural um, boundaries that are seemingly arbitrary? I can eat a pig, but I can't eat a dog. Okay, is that rational? Is that reasonable? No. They're basically the same thing. um, and why can't I eat, a horse, but I can eat, whatever. I can eat a chicken. It's just you're like, okay, well, this is just cultural. It's more or less arbitrary. And then you start to say, okay, well, what else is cultural and arbitrary? And like Jason said, well, what is actually true? And so there's a lot of unpacking that goes on with that. And it's a generally part of the purification process. So I do recommend it to people in the store, but only again if they're really asking. If they're saying, well, what can I do? What's like an easy step? Where do I get started? And then through publishing, like Jason noted, we do subtly, I guess, and in the bookstore, we have a cooking section, and there's no books that have meat in them at all, or recipes on how to cook fish or meat. We just axed them. But in our publishing, we do subtly maybe lead people towards that, because a lot of the books we publish are about um, vegetarian people, like the Neoplatonists, and even the translator of that book is vegetarian. Um, so maybe subtly, yeah. But
So
I'm not in any way like a preacher, or like a activist
right.
or something.
So how long have you owned the bookstore?
Like 3.5 years now.
Nice.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, my last question is, so what was your mission back then?
Mhm.
Like when you were 18, what was your mission in
Oh, I
life?
had no idea what my mission in life was, to be honest. I was in
Well,
college. I
didn't you
did
want to
go.
be you were an a hedge
Mm.
fund guy?
Yeah, yeah. So
You wanted to
as I
make a
was
lot
gonna
of
get
money.
there, when I was 18, I basically I was in college, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My father was a financial advisor. My father passed away when I was 18 too. And then I got in a little trouble when I was 18 as well. So my life got shaken up quite a bit. And then that caused some I don't know, reflection, I guess. And I started to look into finance and investing. I'd always been interested in it. Like I said, that's what my dad did. So I'd always been adjacent to the world, and he'd always taught me all kinds of stuff. Um, but I thought when I was 18 that I'd go into like real estate or something. I had no idea. But once I went down the investing rabbit hole, I found what's called value investing, which is a school of Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett, Monish Pabrai, all these kind of famous investors, and that's a whole podcast on its own, value investing. but it's a lifestyle. It's a whole personality type that latches onto this. Like if you're a value investor, you get it right away, and it's almost how you view the world. Um, and it got me immediately. I was like, I get this. This is perfect. So I went down that rabbit hole. I invested all my money basically from working. I worked full time while I was in college full time, and I invested all of it. Uh, that went really, really well. Where by the time I graduated college, I was going to manage other people's money. So I started a hedge fund. I started what's called an investment partnership, technically, but colloquially it would be known as a hedge fund of sorts. And I was going to manage other people's money. I got a FINRA like Series 65 license and became kind of had the qualifications to do so. And I thought that that was going to be my path, and I'm still super interested in all of that. But about 3 months later, uh, the bookstore that I was a customer of, and I became friends with the owner. He lives in my neighborhood. I'd help him out with stuff at his home. About 3 months later, he called me and he said, "Shane, the plaza that I'm in just got bought by new ownership," and he's like, they're kicking me out. They want me gone. They want to renovate. I can't be here anymore." And this bookstore had been there for decades. So you had stuff piled up. I mean, the prospect of moving this place is almost unfathomable, especially for an 80, I think he's 82 at that point, 82-year-old man to do so was literally impossible. So he said, I'm retiring. There's no way I could manage a move and kind of restarting somewhere. And he said, would you want to buy it? And he knew that I had the means to do so. He kind of knew the path I was on. And I said, yes, immediately. I said, I'll be right there. Literally, I went to Home Depot, got boxes, and I was there within like an hour or two, and I was packing stuff up. And I had already studied owner financing, the purchase of like a private business. And so I said, I'll write up a contract. He said, this is the number I want. And I said, sounds good. And I bought the bookstore. And yeah, I
So
had
how
it
old are
moved.
you?
Yeah.
How
I'm
old are you?
27. I'm 27.
27. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
bought the
it's a short
bookstore.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I bought the bookstore when I was 20. It was around the time of my birthday, so I don't know exactly if I was 23 or 24, but we'll say
Yeah.
24. It was open in the new location when I was 24. Um, yeah, so it was a quick I don't know, path to finding my will, so to speak. And within a few months of owning the bookstore, I said I want to publish books. I saw so many just ugly books and just terrible quality and these cheap flimsy books, and it's outdated basically because publishers are publishing books as if they're useful practical tools, and they're not. A book is cumbersome, it's heavy, there's no reason, it takes up space. There's no reason that you need that. You can listen to books. I can read a PDF. I can have the Library of Alexandria on a thumb drive now. I mean, you know what I mean? You could have a million books in the cloud. You don't even need the thumb drive. And so
Yeah,
they're
but
not.
doesn't that bookshelf look so
eh,
good behind you?
Yeah, exactly. So you're hitting the nail on the head. Its practicality or its utility is actually in aesthetics, like you said. It's not in its practical value, as a book. Not that I'm saying people should read books, but it's now flipped on its head where its usefulness is actually secondary to its aesthetic, meaning it should be a luxury item. It should be a beautiful thing. Kind of like your home should be a beautiful thing. It's you live there, and it's practical, but you want it to be beautiful. And publishers are still treating the books like they're,
Commodity.
yeah, commodity, right? Exactly. Like you need them. You don't need it. You want it, and it should be packaged as such. Just like a bottle of perfume or a bottle of alcohol or something. It's all about the packaging. It's all about, and we're just taking the same approach and saying, yeah, like you know, what's a book to change your life? Someone names a book. Okay. I guarantee if you look up a beautiful edition of it, there's probably not one. And there should be. And it should be really special. And it should look like, wow, this is like a Bible. This is incredible. And that
That's
was the
awesome.
idea.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
Thanks.
So I got a few questions too now.
Okay.
Who are your favorite philosophers? Like, who's your top one or your top three?
Mhm. Well, my answers have changed over the years. If you asked me a few years ago, I would have said Nietzsche was my favorite, but I've I've transcended that. I still love Nietzsche. He's still top 5, but I'd say number 1 is Plato.
Wow.
Yeah, it's gotta be Plato. And in the top 5, I would definitely put, Nietzsche, um, let's see, Alfred North Whitehead has gotta be up there. I would personally put Carl Jung. You know, people might not call him a philosopher, but I sure would. I'd put Carl Jung in there. Um, Maybe Iamblichus and Plotinus, you know, kind of put both of them next to each other, something like that. I'm pretty Platonic, uh, and you know, I'm pretty partial to the Christian material too. I like Jesus as a philosopher and things like that. Yeah, I'd throw all those people in there.
Awesome. That's-
Yeah, I also have no problem with, like, the occult world too. I like Aleister Crowley, I think got him right there.
Wow.
I'm pretty interested in all that kinda stuff too, but definitely for way further down.
Hmm. Wow. So
Yeah, those
Plato,
are some of.
Plato is still the best. Like,
Mhm.
that's awesome. I got to read
He's
that. Right.
still the best, and it's been, you know, kind of like,
Sa-
obviously, you have the Buddha, I mean,
Same as the Buddha. Yeah.
2,300 years, yeah, 2,400
Yeah.
years,
They
so,
call it like the
um
axial age, like when the Buddha and Plato and Pythagoras, they
mhm.
were all like around
Yeah.
600 BC. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, even I think you have Confucius or like Lao
Yeah.
Tzu and
Yeah.
people like
See,
that
both of them. Both of
also.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy, totally crazy. And the Greeks had the pre-Socratics and Aristotle, all lumped in. It's pretty ridiculous.
And
Yeah, but
and you
I'm a Platonist.
Nice. So that's I
Yeah,
was gonna ask you why you chose to publish, because you wanna show those books again? First, you published The Monad, right?
yeah.
And this is
I'm published. It's this one.
yeah, so
Pretty
beautiful.
cool.
So that's
Yeah, that.
a book on the
mm,
Neoplatonists.
That's correct. Yeah, so we chose to do that because Plato gets pretty well published. I don't think he's been done as well as he could, but he definitely gets respect. He gets, you know, pretty widely available. The Neoplatonists are Roman philosophers who come a few hundred years after Plato. So Aristotle is Plato's student. Um, you know, he changed the game, and basically for a few hundred years in late Greece, early Rome, uh, Aristotelianism was commonplace. And then the Neoplatonists are mostly living in Alexandria, Egypt, and Rome, and they start to shake things up. Probably like the 200s AD, 200s, 300s, 400s, with the Neoplatonist movement. So it's a revival of Platonism, which is more or less antithetical to
I
Aristotle's
was gonna say it
teachings.
sounds like a
Um,
rejection of Aristotle, which is so funny.
it is,
I was just
yeah,
telling
yeah,
John on a recording on impermanence that the whole Western world has been shaped by Aristotelian epistemology, whereas the Buddha
yeah,
had a more probably like more like what you're talking about epistemology, where it's not about things, it's about
mhm.
processes and
Yeah,
impermanent
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Fascinating.
Well, Plato differs. I mean, I guess I'll finish the first thought. You have the Neoplatonists, and they just don't. They're so important, especially to like the Renaissance era and like later philosophy, and in the Arab world too. The Neoplatonists are huge. Um, they're so important, but they're not so widely published or widely read. And so we said, hey, why don't we just make a collection where it has Plotinus, who's like the big one, Porphyry, that's a student, and Proclus, who's later on. They're three of the big Neoplatonists, and just put them in one big thing. Like, this is all you need. You just need to buy this. You'll have the Neoplatonists all in one place. It's the best translation that's ever been done of them. It's a beautiful edition. You know, you don't need to go any further. And so that's what we did, and we sold out of it, so it did well. They're all limited editions too, by the way. All the books we publish are about 2,000, 3,000 copies, and You either get one or you don't. So
Wow.
there's some scarcity involved. But yeah, I mean, to Jason's point, Plato and Aristotle are completely uh, incompatible for the most part. Aristotle is, you see this in Star Wars. You have Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then Anakin. And so it's a common archetype where you have the kind of grandfather teacher, you have the fatherly teacher, and then the son is like a rejection of all of it. He's a bad boy. And so you have Socrates, Plato, and then Aristotle. Aristotle rejects the previous two. He goes rogue, just like you see in Star Wars. It's literally an archetype. It happens all the
Yeah.
time. And same thing in the Neoplatonists. You have Plotinus, who's like the grandfather of this revival. You have Porphyry, who's like a star student. And then you have Iamblichus, who completely rejects almost everything the Plotinus teaches in a new kind of form of Neoplatonism. And so, yeah, Aristotle is a materialist. He's, where we get a lot of modern science and kind of empiricism and things like that. He's not all bad, obviously. He has some great arguments, and he's great on rhetoric and things like that. But he rules over the medieval ages. So what happens in the Middle Ages, the reason that we enter a dark age, is that the Roman Empire collapses in the West. And with it, all of this classical knowledge of ancient Greece and ancient Rome goes with it. It's gone. And they don't have Plato in the Middle Ages. It's rumored that maybe they had the Timaeus, which is like one dialogue of his, maybe two dialogues, but they didn't have all the great ancient wisdom, which is the foundation of the West. And so they're literally wandering around just accepting Catholic dogma with none of the juicy mysticism of the Greeks. All of that was in the East, in the Byzantine Empire, in Constantinople. They had all the manuscripts. They had Hermetic wisdom from ancient Egypt. They had all the Platonic wisdom. And in the West, they are Aristotelian Catholics, basically. So Catholic theology is mostly based on Aristotle. Like St. Thomas Aquinas is Aristotelian for the most part. And Aristotle believes that the form of something or the essence of something, I think he says the oisa, it's like a Greek term, is inside of it. So it's almost like a morphic field, that is actually in it, which is a very material idea,
Right.
right?
This is
It's not.
exactly what the
It's
Buddha
yeah,
when the Buddha talks about
yeah,
emptiness, that's
yeah.
exactly what the Buddha is rejecting. It's not the thing,
Rejecting, yeah,
not the
yeah,
appearance. It's just that the thing has something we say like above and beyond it, or something
yeah,
that empowers it from its own side.
yeah,
Whether
yeah.
it,
It's right. So, yeah, Aristotle's take on this is very materialistic. He's saying it's in it. It's literally like trapped in it. It's like saying that your mind is in your head. It's like in your body, and he thinks that things have these kind of self-sufficient identity or essence to them, which is again not transcendent. It's actually in there. And so, in Catholic theology, you get what's called natural theology, which is this idea that God is kind of can be known through studying nature, and that's how you get medieval science. Um, and then the Renaissance occurs because you have Plato and the Neoplatonists coming back into Western Europe with the fall of the Byzantine Empire. So Constantinople falls to the Arab world, to the Muslim world in the 1400s. This causes two things. You have the uh, age of exploration, right? People start sailing all over the world to all kinds of crazy routes, sailing around Africa, sailing across to America. I mean, just going everywhere, trying to get spices and teas, or at least that's what they tell us, but trying to get all this stuff. And you try to think, well, why didn't they do that before? They had boats. They had boats 100 years before that, 300 years before that, 1,000 years before that. And it's because they didn't have to. They had trade routes. They had the Silk Road and trade routes through Europe that meet in Turkey, in Constantinople, which was part of Christendom. It was Christian, and they spoke Greek. They're the Byzantines. And you could go there and get whatever you needed. It was the center of the world. And so you didn't have to sail around Africa or sail to America or go do all this crazy stuff. You just went there. It was easy. But then once it becomes Muslim controlled, they try to cut off Europe and say no more trade for you. And so then you have people sailing all around the world, and it kicks off this. Yes, it's an important time. On top of that, you have the ancient wisdom of architecture, of philosophy, of the arts flooding back into Western Europe. All of these people are refugees. They're literally leaving Turkey and going to Italy and to Rome and into other parts of Europe too. And you get the Renaissance at the same time. You get the Italian Renaissance. Because of that, they start setting up Platonic academies. They start reading Hermetic books, about Egyptian wisdom. This is, crazy stuff. And you have architecture comes back with domes. They didn't know how to build domes in the Middle Ages. They have Gothic architecture where it's all pointed because they didn't know how to build a dome. It's that was lost. It was lost wisdom. So the Middle Ages were really the Dark Ages for sure. And part of that is they were under an Aristotelian spell of scientific. They're scientific materialists, basically, and it wasn't good. But I think where Plato goes, good things follow.
It's almost like the ultimate truth and the relative truth. Like the Aristotelian stuff
Mhm.
we call relative truth. Like it serves a function if you're trying to build like pointy things and computers and certain
Mhm.
things, right? But
Sure.
but as an overall philosophy, if you know what I mean, if you take it to be the ultimate, then you lose touch with like the divine and everything.
Yeah, and Plato, his idea of essences or forms is transcendent. So, like Jason's saying, it's a similar model in how you, I guess, think reality works more or less, but it includes the transcendent. So it's spiritual. It's no longer material, right? The essence of my car or the form of a car is not like in some way like a field that my car uh, takes part in, or grows out of like a leaf. But it's actually a transcendent idea. It's a concept in the mind of God or of the one, which my car is taking part in. But it's actually a higher kind of archetype or form or principle. And so again, if you're a Platonist, you're immediately aware of a higher realm, of a spiritual world. And the particulars, like Jason said, the things that are constantly in flux. And Plato says that there's being and becoming, basically. And so the
Right.
principles of the forms, they are being, they are. And the things which are on the ground level are in a constant state of becoming. And so you're immediately, if you're a Platonist or you have the Platonic education, you're immediately thrown into a world that's set up kind of like Buddhism, in a very transcendent, spiritual way in which the particulars in front of you, it's not like they're useless. They're actually tied into higher ideas. So yeah, it's the opposite of Aristotelianism, and I think a cure for a lot of that.
That would be a great hour conversation just on like Plato and Buddha, like versus Aristotle, and like all the implications
Yeah.
of how that, you know, those first principles, how they shape a culture. But I have one more
Oh, sure. Yeah.
question about that. So, because
Okay.
I have my model, which we're going to be talking about a lot really soon, and I kind of have like it's kind of like has a monad. Everything starts from the one, which is, I'll give a little sneak preview. It's transcendent and imminent. So that means
Mhm.
it's outside, it's beyond everything, and yet it pervades everything. So my
Yeah.
question for you is, in Plato's model, because I know you're an expert in this, like how does the monad, how does this non-dual unity become every molecule and all the multiplicity? How does, I know it's
Yeah, that
a
that
big one.
that yeah, that's a big question, and you're exactly right that in Plato or the Neoplatonists, there is a one, there is the monad, and the monad is immanent and transcendent. Like you said, they think the exact same thing, that it is at the exact same time beyond everything, beyond any conception, beyond being even. Um, it cannot be constrained by any of those states or ideas, but it is at the same time pervasive. It's immanent. It is part of everything. The process of how that unfolds is obviously complicated, um, but it is answered. So the big question, of course, is how does the one, if it's self sufficient and perfect, how or why does it emanate or sort of start to flow out? And to be perfectly honest, the Platonic um, take is twofold. So one is that it's beyond time, so it never starts to unfold. It's always been there. It's always been emanating. It never started to emanate at one given point. And then two, there's different takes on this. They say that it was perfect and self-sufficient, and therefore it started to overflow, like out of like abundance or out of love, something like that. And some people also will, again, there's differing takes on this. Will say that the one thing that it didn't know or didn't have was itself, and so it's like this infinite regress, right? The one thing that God doesn't know or have is God, and therefore it has a sort of mirroring God, right? The sun and the moon kind of a sort of thing, and then that second one, like in the Fibonacci sequence, right? You have 1, 1, 2, 3, and so in Platonism you have the one, which is beyond, and then you have the second one, which is immanent, and then you have 2, which is the dyad, which is where you get division. That would be the intellect or the nous. And then 3 is sort of the world soul, or the
Damn.
anima mundi that
This is
they
so
call it.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize how close to my model this actually is. This is insane. Like we
Yeah.
gotta meet because I
Yeah.
have like the one and
Hmm.
it's like the God asks a question like, who am I? That creates the two
Hmm.
because it has to act
Right.
right. And
Yeah.
then the three, we're calling it the world soul. It's kind of yeah, I kind of have a similar
Mm.
take on that. That's
Yeah.
we gotta we
And
gotta
then
come back
in
and
the
do this again, like
okay.
with the models. Like I would love that'd be awesome.
In the two, you have what's called the realm of forms. So they're pure principles.
Oh, that's in two.
And this is a really interesting distinction in Platonism, is that ideas or concepts, pure ideas or concepts or principles, they'll call them, or forms, they're all the same thing,
Mm,
different words for the same thing. They are actually on a higher ontological status than particulars, than things, like things in the world.
sure.
So a lot of people will say, well, an idea is fleeting. It's just like, oh, it's an idea. I had an idea. I had a thought. But that things like the table right here is material. It's concrete. It's exact.
It's more
When
real.
actually
More
this is
real. It
yeah,
it it, it supersedes the idea of it.
yeah, yeah.
And you're
And so
saying it's the
this
opposite.
is yeah. It's called the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Um, and what that is that actually ideas are eternal. They're unchanging. They are not subject to time and space. They are pure, right? You hear a lot of people say something like, "Oh, well, in theory, it was perfect, but then when I went to do it, it was not." In theory, a triangle is exact, or a line is straight, but in the world, it's not. It's that sort of thing. That these ideas or principles, like beauty or justice or virtue, are objective and real, and probably more real than any uh, particular instance of beauty or
Right,
justice or
because
virtue, or yeah,
exactly like because
in the yeah,
like in the movie The Matrix, right? Like you touch a table, it's not any more real. It's just that you're getting signals that
hmm
that like
yeah,
that and the sense of touch is very that's
yeah,
fascinating. How that
yeah. They're also the ideas are usually prior to the particulars, meaning like the idea is kind
right.
of you need to have the idea first before before the thing is
Causality.
actually yeah
It's
before it's actually
causality.
there. Yeah. Um, and Alfred North Whitehead says that if you want to get interested in metaphysics or get out of like a materialist mindset. Exactly what John just said. He said flip causality on its head, right? You in the realm of ideas, or the imagination, whatever you want to call it, um, the idea comes first. It's projected out into the future and then retroactively causes the thing to happen. So it's actually causality from the future. It's completely flipped, right? So I have the idea to pick up this cup, and then I pick up the cup, you know, and it's like the idea caused me to pick up the cup. Um, and some people can't, have the idea and the perfect vision to build this house, and then I build it. And it's like my idea in the future as a perfect thing caused it to happen retroactively. That's pretty anti-materialistic. That's pretty trippy stuff. And if you go like that's a pretty quick exercise. And if you go down that rabbit hole, all of a sudden the things that we're discussing here become pretty interesting and important.
That would be two good names for like our podcast: the Neoplatonists, or like
Mhm.
what you just said, like what was it, like destroying the materialists or something? Podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
'Cause it
yeah.
really
That's
is,
pretty good.
at this point, like
Mm,
it's just so
yeah,
it's so like overdue for like this materialism, this
sure.
Aristotelian domination of the minds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Plato is pretty badly needed in the West right now. Um,
Beautiful. Like, yeah,
like
and
I,
you
he saves you a lot of time. The Platonic education
mhm,
literally teaches you how to think,
right.
right? It teaches you how to do reasoning, how to spot contradictions and fallacies, how to very quickly identify nonsense, um, how to use dialectics, which is like pitting two opposites against each other to reach a reconciliation, in order to see kind of the source of these things and climb that chain upwards. You can keep doing that until you get to the one, literally.
Exactly.
And that is quite a good education to get. And I know Jason the other week talked to me and said that people don't realize that a lot of the Nikayas or the Buddhist texts are meant to be read in a certain order. And they're meant to be read in that order because it's a step-by-step education or like
Mhm,
initiation. And people will just jump ahead and read the Dhammapada or read the this,
right.
and they're missing a lot of the step-by-step things, and people don't realize that Plato is the same way. A lot of people just go and read the Republic and say, "Oh yeah, I read Plato." Um, the Neoplatonists and Iamblichus in particular gives a specific curriculum that they would teach you in literally in a Platonic academy in a school to read the dialogues in a specific order. And that specific order is literally an initiation step by step. And one day somebody asked the Iamblichus, they're like, hey, I read them in this order. What's interesting is that when I read them in this order, you can see that two dialogues will be back to back that are directly contradicting each other. So you read a dialogue and it's, Plato talking with Socrates about how matter is divine, right? Matter it comes from God and it's good and etc. And then the next dialogue, I'm reading it and it's saying matter is evil and we're trapped in it, and Gnostic kind of thing. I'm in a prison planet and I got to get out. And these two ideas are directly in contradiction. And Yamblick has said, yeah, exactly. That's why I'm having you read them like that, because you should be able to defend the first point and the second point. They're a dialectic, and then reconcile them
Which
into wisdom,
John calls a
basically.
conjunctive. That's what's so crazy. Like we each have our own models, and they're all. I think when we put them together, we're gonna create this like
Yeah.
Buddhist Platonic school, like
Hmm.
on like like a something fresh and
Yeah.
exciting, and like rooted
Hmm.
in Florida.
Yeah. John, what is your what would you say your expertise is, or what is modeling God?
Oh yeah,
This
I was
this
gonna.
is a much longer talk. This is a much
Yeah.
longer talk. Are you familiar with the Strauss-Howe, uh,
I
theory?
don't think so. No.
So, basically, every 20 to 22 years, it's called the turnings. Every 20 to 22 years,
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
the
yeah.
you told
mentality.
me about this.
Yeah, this is the fourth turning, the stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I am familiar. I didn't know it
so
by that name, but yeah.
my expertise is that I'm a modeler, and
Mhm,
I model backwards from the way you two are modeling. You guys are modeling experience to truth. And
mhm,
so you're coming up with all these things to get closer and closer and closer. But there is a truth that if you understood it, you'd come back the other way. And
yeah,
there are 4 thought processes. The thing that makes me different than everybody else is that I have a non-contradictory model for the mind and the brain. So everything you guys are talking about ultimately goes to the mind and the brain. So all
mhm,
I'd have to do, like, I'm really dangerous for 2 reasons. One is I could ask all sorts of questions because everything is going through your senses, everything's going through unconscious,
yeah,
subconscious, all that. And then
mhm,
second of all, I know how to argue in a way that if you have a contradiction and you don't admit it, your body's going to depress you.
sure.
So I can lose the argument and win the war. I do that all the
Okay.
time. I
Yeah,
argue with people and go, great, you can feel great, but tomorrow morning you're going to feel like crap.
yeah.
Okay.
I
But
will
if you,
I will You can go.
well, if you have this contradiction and you don't resolve it. So what was interesting about what you said is that what happens is the first person has the higher thought process, the creative thought process. I call
Mhm,
that the 10. Then the second person goes to the logical thought process. We call it the 80. And then the third person goes to the 160 and just wrecks it.
yeah, sure.
And so Plato's the 80 and
Yeah,
Aristotle's the 160.
that's correct.
There is a zero. And the problem
There
is
is, yeah.
you can't jump. It's kind of what you were saying at the end about the dialectic is
Mhm,
like the answer above Plato and Aristotle is not more Plato.
yeah,
It's Aristotle and Plato
I
with
agree.
the overlap. And
So
I
so
grew up,
that's
my
yeah,
dad set an example for me where every Labor Day, Memorial Day, we would vacation at the Colorado River. And this is like late 60s, early 70s. There's nothing to do out there. My dad and his friend would sit there under the stars. They'd pick a topic. They'd argue about it for 15 minutes. Then they'd flip sides and argue about it. And
mhm,
that's
yeah,
what I grew up with. Is just
yeah.
what you were saying. It's like, if you can't argue both sides of something, you don't understand it.
Yeah, that is a Platonic education, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that because the Neoplatonists, because they have the luxury of coming after Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, several hundred years, they don't outright reject Aristotle completely. Like you said, they actually synthesize it. So
Yep.
they
That's
use
his
the
word.
dialectic. Yeah, so they take the best parts of Aristotle. It's not like they completely just trash him, and they take the best parts of Plato, and that's why I think they're pretty important. Unfortunately, with Socrates, he's one of those classic guru types that didn't write anything. Right? Like obviously, like the Buddha or all kinds of yogi masters and people like that. They don't write their own stuff. So we don't have anything directly from Socrates, but he is the fountain of wisdom there. I will say though, when you we're talking about working from experience backwards, I would say that I do not for the most part. So I usually start with what's called the transcendental argument for God. It's referred to as TAG. The transcendental argument for God is kind of a top down model and is Platonic. So the Platonists would
So what's
start with
God's identity?
well, it's yeah, that gets complicated, right?
Well,
I
no,
would
that's what I'm
yeah,
talking about. Starting from a
yeah,
cause. So what modeling God is once you have the identity of the monad,
yeah,
everything in the model after that has to agree with that and not contradict it. And so
right,
modeling God is a book that starts off with that identity and then goes through all the principles and says, look, what do you think this principle is? Well, that would
yeah,
contradict. What is it?
yeah,
And so that's what it does going forward.
yeah.
I think, first of all, I'd love to talk with you. Second of all, I could listen all day to you talking about the history with the
Mm,
Byzantines and all. Like, I love that. Like, one of my
yes.
favorite videos is Akoff taking us from the Middle Ages to today and
Oh yeah,
showing like causality, how everything happened and why we are where we're at today. And
yeah,
you just did everything before that. So that's why I was just
yeah,
sitting here. Like, if I had popcorn while you were talking about all
yeah.
that, I'd be like,
Sure.
this could be my favorite part. I'm gonna clip this and
Oh, good. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna be able to show this, and I'm gonna go back and rewatch it like 5 or 6 times
Oh,
and
good.
take notes.
Okay.
So, and you're the Byzantine expert.
Yeah.
Was
I
one
would,
of your books
yeah.
about that?
Not yet. No. We will be
Okay.
doing those. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay, then I'll
That's
buy one of
another.
the limited editions of those then, because that was
Okay,
great.
cool.
That was
Yeah.
great stuff. That was
Cool.
awesome.
Yeah, as Shane
Glad you
says,
liked it.
like, you know, there's libraries of Rome, of the East, of the Western Roman Empire, right? But there's there's so few books on the Byzantine, even though for 1,000 years
Yeah.
it was like,
It's literally, yeah, it's unbelievable, really. Like I said, when people think of Rome, they think Western Rome, they think Marcus Aurelius, Julius Caesar, blah blah blah. And like I said, you could fill up my whole bookstore with books on that version of Rome. But then, you know, Constantine moves the capital, Constantinople. That empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, carries on from the 300s until the 1400s.
See,
So
I
it's
don't
a
feel like
thou.
I've ever heard anybody just
no.
No,
explain
And
that.
it's funny,
yeah,
the first
it's
time I
I've
ever,
never heard
yeah,
anybody
before
explain
I
that.
even knew Shane had a bookstore in Lake Worth, I heard him on a podcast talking about the Byzantine Empire, and I was like,
Oh,
Yeah.
who is this guy?
you need to write
Yeah.
the book and be that guy. Like, that's
Sure.
amazing stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
that's the
crazy
stuff you can go
stuff.
on Joe Rogan and talk about right there with all that
Sure.
stuff. That's just
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's like almost hidden history. And like Jason said, if you look up the best books on the Byzantine Empire, I mean, you might be able to fill up one shelf behind me. There's maybe 5 or 6 books that you have to read. That's it.
What about
You
in
know?
like Turkish
And
language? Don't they have more? Would they have more books there?
they probably do, yeah. But again, they're the cultural and religious differences
Right.
because
They
they're
don't have
obviously
the
Muslim.
perspective.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, they don't,
Shane
but they
just
don't.
painted
Yeah.
this huge masterpiece with that explanation.
It's pretty crazy. And they also, I mean, there's reasons that it's hidden. One of the big ones is obviously religious because the Western church, the Catholic and Protestant churches don't like the idea of a competitive like Eastern Orthodox church. And, you know, showing its glory for 1,000 years is kind of not a good idea if you're trying to promote Catholicism or Protestantism. So
Yeah,
there's
that was
that. So
amazing.
they kind of scrub it out. And then there's even financial reasons. If you look up the solidus, the like solid, like SOLIDUS, the solidus is the gold Byzantine coinage. It's the most stable currency in world history. So for 750 years, the Byzantine solidus did not inflate. Over almost 800 years, it was stable and was considered the world standard of value.
Did you know that, Jason?
No, I learn from Shane all the time. Like, just go.
Yeah,
This
you
is
can
incredible.
Google. Yeah,
This is
Google it right now.
incredible.
You're gonna
The
meet
Byzantine.
John.
Yeah.
You're gonna get to meet him Thursday, and like,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, man. This is amazing stuff. Like, seriously, I'm shocked.
It's cool
No one,
stuff.
like,
Yeah.
that was my first thought. I'm gonna get off this and go look for a book to read on it now. And now I can figure out why there's not going to be any good ones to read.
Yeah, there are good ones, but like I said, it's just a few of them. There's a handful. Whereas if you're interested in ancient Rome, I mean, you could read, 400 books on ancient Rome alone. But
And
ancient Rome,
I've read that. That's the stuff I've done. It's just when you said this, I'm like, there's a huge gap. I'm missing this huge gap.
Yeah, in the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire was the center of the world in Constantinople, like for trade, from the 300s, 400s until 1400. So it's a big deal, but it's pretty much X'd out. And they're like, oh, because in Western Europe, people were illiterate. They're peasants. They're eating cereals and grains, and they're just like doing nothing for 1,000 years.
And that's where Akoff picks off right there. Here's the, he goes to the Middle Ages right up to Renaissance. He goes, here's, put yourself in this is what it's doing. But everything you said, Shane,
like
Shane about that was just totally missing.
Even like when
totally
they mentioned
missing,
like the average person lived to 40, they had all this medicine, all this herbal medicine wisdom in the Eastern side.
It was highly cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
So it was like a New York or a London or something, right? Because it's located in Turkey. It's on the border with Asia, obviously, of the continents, if Europe and Asia. It's very very close to the Middle East, very close to North Africa, obviously to Europe and Eastern Europe, Russia, India. I mean, they're so centrally located. And you had the Silk Roads. They had stuff coming from China. They end up, there's crazy stories. Like the Byzantines sent in a spy to figure out how silk was being made in China. It was it was the world's like top secret.
Oh yeah.
Silk was so valuable and nobody knew how it was made. There would be like 3 people that were using these silkworms and like farming them and creating silk, and they had to keep the secret like under penalty of death. And the Byzantines were buying all the silk coming down the Silk Road and selling it to Europe. And they were like, dude, we've got to figure out how they're doing this. And they sent someone in, and it was like a long game. Like they had this guy, in undercover for like 20 years or something, and finally bring back the secret. And he brought back one of the silkworms. Literally, he like traveled a silkworm to Turkey and was like, this is how that, and nobody could believe it because the last thing anybody thought about how they're making silk is it's a worm. You know what I mean? If you saw silk, they were like, oh, there has to be some kind of refining process, or they're treating it or something. And then the guy shows up and he's like, yeah, it's a worm. They shoot out silk, and they're like, you got it.
And that's the way a creative, that's every model and everything is you couldn't logic your way up to a worm.
Exactly. There's no way. Nobody would have ever guessed that it was a worm making like the most valuable thing in the world.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. If you ever want me to come back, I'll do whenever.
Thank you, Shane.
You got it.
man.
I'll talk
See you
to you
guys
soon.
later.
Bye.
See ya.